So what do we have here? We've got 1, 2, 3 ladies' pens. That's what we've got here, just 3 ladies' pens. This one we've seen before. This is the Star Pen Company. These were made by the John Holland Company, I believe. I'm just going to say they were. You can tell me if I'm wrong. And this has a very nice moppy nib, and I've shown you this before as well. I'm dipping them in sort of dirty water, and they have dirty ink in them. And well, evidently, I need to actually use real ink. So I'm not going to use the expensive Waterman. I'm not going to use the expensive Waterman because it costs too much for me to scribble with it. I'm always running out of it and I have to go buy new stuff. So I'm using Carter blue ink in a Parker Bear bottle. And the Carter ink, as you know, or maybe you don't know, but I'll tell you right now, the Carter Company went out of business decades ago, and oh, there we go. When this pen goes out on a date, it takes off its wedding ring there to sort of play the field better. Evidently, that's not supposed to come off, but it does. So fix that. So anyway, this has that moppy nib. And I just am showing you this to contrast with the ink, the nibs on the other two pens that I just fixed. And I'm going to talk about those nibs more than anything, but I'm just playing with this one right now. Cincinnati, Ohio. Why does that come off? That didn't come out. That wasn't. It's so funny. Anyway, I'll attach that better. They're just friction fit on, but usually they don't come off like that. I mean, they can, but not as surprisingly easy as that. So this has this really big moppy, wet, floppy nib, and can I apply that to this person's personality if this was a human? Not really. I mean, I could, but I'm not going to. Sloppy wet kisser. I'll just leave it at that. You can fill in the blanks. Especially when she takes her wedding ring off there. Wedding band off. What I like about this pen, I mean, there's a number of things I like about it. Yes, the sloppy kisser is kind of fun. And it's a complete opposite to these two. So remember the sloppy kissy bit. Kind of a drunken sloppy kiss. It's been a long time since I've had one of those, but I know what they're like. They're seared into my, the fact that the drunk guy could even navigate his mouth to mine was amazing because he's so hammered. But the sloppy kiss, you know what they're like, sloppy kisses. That's what this nib is like. It's sort of very sloppy. And why would one want a sloppy nib? And it's hard for me to see the value in that, other than, as I described earlier, if I had little tiny place cards that I had to make with very broad lines. This allows me to go from 0 to 60, or in this case from 20 to 80 and back again, because it starts out so fat, really easily, and it doesn't take up time or space to get to that point. It just automatically happens. that this pen would be great for that. I don't know whether I would find it easy to write out an entire letter with this pen because it's so sloppy, and I would probably have to refill it 8 times because it uses a lot of ink to make these big broad lines. But it's very different, this pen, from these two. And I wanted to talk about these 2 pens. These were the ones that I just recently put sacks in and wrote with, and they are similar, if I remember correctly, and very different from that one. They're sort of the opposite extremes, or one of the opposites. Very, very tight, sharp, prim. These kisses are without, this is a tiny peck on the cheek compared to the sloppy, wet French kiss over here. These are very, very tight. They're flexible, but they want not to be. They really want the iridium halves to touch. You have to really work to get them to splay. But what I love about this is the really fine, and I like the idea that I have to do some work when I'm using this pen. This is, like when I watch these airplane crash movies or airplane accident investigation things, and writing with this is like flying an airplane where the elevators and the rudders don't work, but the engines are, the elevators and the flaps. This one, the rudder and the flaps don't work. They're just randomly going all over the place. But the only thing that's working well is the engines, and they're turned on full blast. And so this is a roller coaster sort of a thing. And this is and there's work that you need to do to control the airplane flying all over the place like that. And that's what this pen is like. You have to work to keep it level. This wants to be level. This wants to just taxi endlessly up and down the runway. It doesn't want to take off. And you have to will it to take off. You have to really do the work to make it go. I'm not explaining it very well, but the work that you do to make this go, the work you're doing makes it go. The work you're doing here makes it stop. You're sort of holding back on this one, where this one requires your efforts to make it go, to make it do what you want it to do, in a positive way. This is sort of a negative way, if that makes sense. This is a Moore fountain pen with a little chip out of the cap. I didn't notice that until it was all finished putting the sack on it. I might have a cap in my parts bin that I can replace that with. But this nib is sort of the love child of, these had a kid, and this is the kid, I guess. It's a little tiny bit more flexible. Takes after mom. But it's really fine. This is the one that most calligraphers would prefer of the 3. Because this has the biggest range. And it's not fighting you in the same way that this one was fighting you and this one was fighting you. This one doesn't really fight. It just requires more work. It's not, I don't know, maybe it is fighting you. It's hard to really describe. Some pens want you to make a line with them, and other ones seem to want to go back to bed. They don't want to do their job. And when you get a pen that is perky and right out of bed and has a cup of coffee in it and it wants to work with you, that's really great. This one just wants to go back to bed, but it's really fun to write with as well. These two would make me smile. This one would make me angry because it's just too wet. It's not the wetness, it's the I don't know what's the word. It's not the sloppiness. It's sort of, this one has a built-in fragility to it also, because when I press down on this nib, there's so little resistance given back to me that I fear that the nib is going to break. And I don't like feeling that in a nib. And I have many nibs that are like this that I don't use very much because I'm afraid to. I think you really have to pay attention to this to make sure you don't press too hard. And I guess that's part of its control thing, because if you press too hard, you're going to break it. And you have to really be aware to put the brakes on this one. Where these, because it takes you so much effort to make them go, you're very aware that you're reaching that limit, and then you'll pull back. The play between your work, your forces that you put on these things, and the force that the nib plays against you is really such a beautiful experience. And when you and it can dance together, when you finally are not stepping on each other's toes and you're moving together and you can sort of predict where the dance partner wants to go, you really can make some beautiful music together. It's corny, I know, but it isn't. That's what it's like. It's this dance that you and your partner are making. And this one is drunk. This is always stepping on your toes. You have to spend half the time holding him up, because he's so hammered, sloppy, that you can't dance. You're bumping into people. You're left, right, slide over, left, right, and you find yourself, in the orchestra pit because you've lost you've lost your bearings when you're writing with this one. You don't really quite know where you are. You just are trying so hard to keep the thing from falling over completely that you lose your bearings. And these are right on target, especially this one. This one is so prim and reserved, I guess. This is like the retired librarian. No, she's not retired yet. This one's retired. She's retired, and she's now finally having fun. She has a little voodoo doll of Dewey Decimal, and she sticks pins in him every day, so he spins in his grave or whatever. She's tired of being the librarian and all of the baggage that brought her in her life. And now she's retired on her library pension or whatever. And what would a librarian do in their retirement? If any of you are librarians or know librarians that retire, do they take up fly fishing or what? What do they do? But this one's enjoying her life a little bit, or doing something different. I don't know what she's enjoying her life. This one wants to be a librarian all her life. There is something very sharp and exact about this nib. This wants to, yes, it can do this kind of stuff, and it's happy to do that. But when she goes out to have a drink, it's just one glass of sherry. I don't know. It's just my brain is trying to figure this one out. I need to get my friend Ted over here to help me do this, because he's the person that sort of inspired me to think about these as humans, little tiny humans, and with a history. And I'll have to remember the next time he visits that I want him to try these 3 pens so he can come up with his stories. I'm sure you would enjoy them. But by the time he next visits, I may have sold these or broken them or kept them or done something to them. I'm not going to break them, I hope. Anyway, that's today's, well, that's the first of today's videos. Look at me, covered in ink. But I just, when I tried these 2 nibs out, these just really made me smile, and I wanted to share the way they act with you. I just wanted you to meet them. They both have no names on them other than their maker's name. This has an Aiken Lambert nib, and they made really, really nice nibs. I don't think it's an Aiken Lambert pen, though it could have been. It's not marked, and most of their pens are marked. So the nib got into it by mistake somewhere down along its life, and it fits perfectly fine, and it'll stay there, I think, for the moment. On a comic note, I was clearing my desk and I ran across this pen. I've been talking about these to you for a while, the Waterman Stately, but this one is neat because, as you can see, it's bent. It's banana shaped to a degree, and I don't know how it got that way. Oftentimes you'll be at a flea market and you'll see a glass case with the sun beating down on it, and everything inside of it is melting and bubbling because it's so hot in there. The greenhouse effect caused this to happen. And yes, I probably can fix it if I want to, but when I put a sack in it just to test out how it wrote, I really actually liked the bend in it. It's really an interesting feel. And if you have a pen that has a bend in it, try it out. Orientate it so the bend goes toward the inside of your hand. And it sort of fits really, really neat. It's like that Christian, quote, scientist that one of his proofs against evolution was that the banana is perfectly fitted to fit in the hand of a man. Right. Why aren't all fruits perfectly, why aren't they all banana shaped then? Stupid. Why aren't carrots banana shaped and broccoli banana shaped and apples banana shaped? Aren't they supposed to be consumed by man? And then someone pointed out to him that the shape of the banana was something that man bred into the species. So the only pen I know that was meant to have a curve was that Waterman Samurai pen, or whatever they called it. And I would love to try one of those. I think that they're bent a different way, though. I wonder if this was... I don't know. I like the fact that it's bent this way. I do have one pen in my collection that is so worn that the plating on the cap is so worn down and corroded, and the barrel of the pen is so bent that it was very clear that the man that, and it has a name of a man on the side of it, it was so clear that the man that owned it just, white-knuckled his way through his loud, noisy, angry letters to the editor, because the pen is so misshapen due to his brute force. And this was due to someone leaving it in the case at the flea market too long. But I've kept it this way, and I've used it, and I've actually kind of enjoyed it. This one actually fits nicely because of its bend, and if you don't post it, in a way it sort of feels almost like another index finger. It's attached to your hand in such a way. Okay, on that note, bye. That was an abrupt ending, Pierre Gustafson. Have a nice day. Hope to hear from you again. Eat your vegetables, wash your hands. Bye.